Cinematic, 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 cinematic. We all want cinematic footage, but how do we get there? Yes people, what's good? Welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to be going through the best cinematic gimbal and camera settings for the Air 2S. If you like what you hear or see in this video, be sure to hit the red button below and subscribe. Let's do it. Okay, so I'm going to break this down into two sections, the gimbal settings and the camera settings. I did do a video with the Mini 2 best cinematic gimbal settings, but I didn't cover the camera settings, so today I'm going to cover both. First things first, you need to connect everything up, the drone to the controller to your phone. Both sets of settings can be Sets of settings. Both settings can be accessed through the DJI Fly app. So once the phone is connected to the controller, open up the DJI Fly app. Once you're on the main takeoff screen, hit the three dots in the top right corner. First of all, I'm going to cover the gimbal settings. Click on control and then scroll all the way down until you see advanced gimbal settings. Here you can see the three different flying modes: normal mode, cine smooth mode and sports mode. Obviously today we're focusing on cine smooth mode. Underneath cine smooth mode you can see four different options: pitch speed, pitch smoothness, your speed and your smoothness. Forget about everything else. These four settings is all you need. But you're probably thinking, what do all of these mean? Well, let me explain in the most simplest, easiest way possible. Pitch speed basically means how fast or slow the gimbal head moves up or down. Pitch smoothness is how quick or slow the gimbal head stops moving when you let go of the wheel. Your speed is how fast or slow the drone turns left or right, not moves from left to right, but turns left or right. And your smoothness is how fast or slow the drone stops moving left or right when you let go of the sticks. The basics of setting these settings right is the speeds need to be low and the smoothnesses need to be high. Because if the speeds are low and the smoothnesses are high, you're going to get that smooth, slow cinematic footage that you want. That was a bit weird. Anyway, I keep the pitch speed at 7, pitch smoothness at 30, your speed at 20, and your smoothness at 100. I basically max out the smoothnesses and keep the speed as minimum as possible for the yaw, but the pitch speed I find it just a little bit too slow if it's brought all the way down, so I've found it best to keep it at 7. Anything above 7 is too fast, anything below 7 is just a little bit too slow. Yes, I did say a little bit too slow. You can obviously play around with this, play around with the numbers and work out what's best for you. You might think 7 is too slow or too fast. Likewise with all of the other numbers, you might want to change them, but keep in mind the basics of getting that smooth buttery footage is the speeds need to be low and the smoothnesses need to be high. I cannot stress this enough though, how you control the controller plays a massive factor in the overall end result. You can't just set the numbers and then use the sticks and the wheel as normal. You need to be gentle and delicate in how you're moving the sticks and you're moving the wheels. If you move them super fast or super roughly, everything is going to reflect that in the footage. Whereas if you use gentle movements, everything is going to look nice and smooth. A quick tip, if you want to change these settings mid-flight, you can do, but if you change any of the numbers, you need to come out of cine mode and back into it for it to register. So for example, if you've set your pitch speed to 10 and you find it's too fast and the drone is in the air, you can go into the gimbal settings and change it to 7, but if you change it to 7, you need to come out of cine mode on the controller and then back in to cine mode for it to register. If you don't and you continue flying, it's still going to be flying as pitch speed 10. So it just needs a little bit of a reset for you to come out and then back in, and then it will re-register the new numbers that you've put in. I've done it so many times where I've been in the air and I've gone in to change the numbers and I've continued flying and I'm like, there's no difference. The reason there's no difference is because I didn't do that little reset, if you like, coming out of cine mode into normal and then back into cine mode for it to register the new numbers. So in summary, keep your speeds low, keep your smoothnesses high, be gentle on the controller, and the footage will look nice and smooth. Now let's go through the camera settings. To access these settings, you need to click on the little camera icon in the bottom right corner that says auto. Click on that and it will then change to Pro. Pro mode is what you want to be in. You want full control over everything. Shutter speed, white balance, ISO, etc. If you're in auto mode, everything will change for you, which means when you're filming a shot, things won't be consistent throughout. When you're in pro mode, you'll see different options come up next to it. Clicking on each of these options will bring up further options. Because we're talking about the best cinematic settings today, I'm going to go through with you what I keep my settings on to get that cinematic look. With the Air 2S, the highest resolution is 5.4K, so I'm going to keep it in that, and I'll keep my frame rate to 24. Your shutter speed should always be double what your frame rate is, so I will change that to 1/50 because our frame rate is 24. Your ISO needs to be as low as possible, so I'll keep that at 100 because that's the lowest it goes. And your white balance will be different based on what scene you're filming. If it's a sunny day, a cloudy day, a dark day, you need to set that based on what you're filming. And then next to that, you can see exposure. If you're in a minus, it means that your image is too underexposed. And if you're in a plus, it means the image is too overexposed. If it's too overexposed, you need your ND filters. With the Fly More combo, you get 4 in the box, 4, 8, 16 and 32. Again, based on what you're filming and how overexposed it is, you need to play around with what number you think is best to put on there to bring the image back down to what it should be. If you've got the reverse problem and everything is too underexposed because everything is a bit too dark and you're filming later in the evening, there's no sun or whatever, that's where you need to bring the ISO up. Now, if you bring the ISO up, you're going to introduce noise and grain. So remember, you need to keep the ISO as low as possible. So bringing it up to 200, 300, 400 won't make too much of a difference, but anything above that, you're starting to introduce noise, especially in the dark areas. So keep in mind, you want to keep your ISO as low as possible. Slow motion. If you want to film slow motion, don't film it at 24 frames per second and then slow it down later. It will just look crap. If you want to film slow motion, make sure you change your frame rate to 60 frames per second. Now, because the Air 2S in 5.4K only goes up to 30, we'll need to go to the next best thing, which is 4K. If you change to 4K, you see you have the option to go all the way up to 60 frames per second. But remember, we now need to change our shutter speed based on what we've just changed our frame rate to. Shutter speed needs to be double, so it will be 1/120 in this case. And it's so important to change your shutter speed if you change your frame rate. If you don't, you're not going to get that natural motion blur in your final video. Now we've got our frame rate at 60, everything will look much better when you go to slow it down later. So let's summarize the camera settings. Keep your resolution as high as possible based on the frame rate that you're filming at. If you're not filming slow motion, keep your frame rate at 24. Your shutter speed needs to be double the frame rate, so keep it at 1/50. Your ISO needs to be as low as possible, so keep it at 100. Your white balance needs to change based on the scene that you're filming, and use an ND filter if the image is too overexposed. If you're filming slow motion, change it to 4K 60, but make sure you change your shutter speed to 1/120. And that is pretty much it for the best cinematic camera and gimbal settings for the Air 2S. Thanks for watching. If you like what you've seen, check out my other videos, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one. And I'm out. Peace.